Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. My name is Charlie Pond, and I am this morning's service leader. We are not the first people on this land, nor will we be the last. We acknowledge our connection to the web of all existence, honoring the past and preparing for the future. The stewardship of the original people preserved in this place for our generation. We seek to be respectful stewards of this place for those who follow. We welcome you today, whatever the circumstances of your life, in the many ways we identify as people, and in the diversity of how we love and live. In this place of faith, we are all included as we search for truth, build community, and strive to make the world a better place for all. This morning's call to worship comes from a poem by Alice Walker. Love is not concerned with whom you pray or where you slept the night you ran away from home. Love is concerned with that the beating of your heart should kill no one.
Number 86, Blessed Spirit of my life. Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then, when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. My name is Jamie Boyce, and I have the great privilege of serving this congregation as the interim minister. We light our chalice this morning as a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Join me as we say these words in unison. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. It is a great joy to introduce Michelle Corbet this morning. Michelle will share her thoughts on the addition of the 8th principle to our existing 7. Michelle has been attending the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton since the spring of 2000 and became a member in 2003. Those of you who know Michelle do so through her active involvement in numerous committees, task force, and board work over 15 years. More recently, Michelle has stepped back a bit, staying in touch through services and keeping on top of the work of the congregation through our online publications. This fall, Michelle is pleased to be working with Mary Eve on the church canvas, which is launching next week. Please welcome Michelle Corbet to our service.
Thank you, Reverend Boyce, and thank you, Beverly, for this invitation to speak and share my thoughts. I wholeheartedly support the inclusion of the proposed 8th principle We, the member congregations of the Canadian Unitarian Council, covenant to affirm and promote individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. I believe it isn't enough to want or strive to be non-racist or non-oppressive. I believe the way forward in making real change is to be active agents, or in other words, anti-racist, and engaging in other anti-oppressive practices. Like many of you, I was raised in the white dominant culture. Long before I could walk, talk, or think, I was immersed in the values and ideas of white supremacy and Black inferiority. These beliefs were reinforced in the family in which I was raised. I recall the shameful realization as a teenager that my father held racist, along with many other oppressive beliefs, when I began to notice what was going on in the world beyond my immediate family, to read and to question, to form opinions and to challenge what at the time was labeled inequality and prejudice. And while I did not have a sophisticated analysis, my 10-year-old self knew it was wrong to use hurtful words, to refer to people or groups of people, to target their homes with eggs, and to exclude them on the basis of how they were different. For me, the 7 principles, which numbered 6 principles when the Universalists and Unitarians merged in 1961, are dynamic and ever evolving. Our principles are touchstones that express our values and act as guides throughout our lives. They have certainly supported me and guided me in times of challenge and trial. The 8th principle for me is a call to action, a reminder of a lifetime of work ahead of me to look inward and to examine where deeply embedded racist ideas and thoughts continue to exist so they can be challenged and transformed. It's also a call to action to make visible and dismantle systemic barriers that have served to exclude equity-seeking groups and people while upholding the dominant structures, policies, and practices, some of which operate outside of our consciousness. The 8th principle will help us measure and hold ourselves and our congregations accountable for the progress or lack of progress we make. Only when we name it, claim it, dismantle it, can we then transform and create new and more equitable ways of coexistence. I welcome the inclusion of the 8th principle. Thank you.
Our story for all ages today is Be You by Peter H. Reynolds. You were born to be so many things. And my wish for you, no matter where your journey leads, is for you to always be you. Be ready to take that next step toward being an amazing human being. Be curious, turn every stone, ask every why, and keep digging deeply. Discover your own answers. Be adventurous. Live a big life. When you are ready, step outside your comfort zone. Bravely explore new paths and see where they lead you. Be connected. Find kindred spirits. Be with those who make you feel like the real you. Be persistent. Keep going, never stop. Keep going, never stop. Keep going, never stop. Be different, be silly, be quirky, be odd, be unique, be weird. Be colorful, be okay with being different. Be just the way you are. Be kind and be understanding. Help those around you to be themselves. Listen, then listen some more. Learn about who they are. Be brave. Try new things. Take a deep breath and plunge forward into new experiences. It gets easier every time you try. Be your own thinker. Think for yourself and set your own unique course. It isn't always easy, but you'll be headed in the direction of you. Be okay being alone. Take time to be on your own. Hear your own thoughts, your inner voice. Listen to your heart. Be patient. Being more you takes time. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let your future unfold at its own pace. It will be worth the wait. Be okay reaching out for help. When you need a helping hand, a compassionate ear, an encouraging word, reach out. And as you voyage out into the world, remember, no matter what, you will always be loved. You are ready, so go ahead. Be you. Be very, very you. That's the end of our story.
Let us practice being ourselves in a time of reflective meditation. Let us feel our bodies hold us in this space, this virtual space, the space of our home. Let us notice our breath, the beating of our heart, and meet any discomfort with compassion and love. Let us open our hearts to these words from Susan Machen. Faith for now. As we settle into our seat, all of life comes down with us like an extended slinky retracting into a single cylinder. Back you snap into this body and breath, where each day is born and done, familiar in this cushion, familiar in this ache. Silence comes quick and wraps us up together, claiming all of our wounds as one. Fighting back all that could seduce us to stand and walk away. Silence is bigger than the wiggling chairs, calling birds, the unsatisfied child. Within this pulsing hum, our soft face is recognized, held close, held here, held together.
I'll get through. still, you'll get through this. Breathe in, breathe out, dig deep, we can do this. Breathe in, breathe out, be still, we'll get through this.
For the past 18 months, much of our lives have moved into the digital sphere as the pandemic has unfolded and changed the way we live, likely forever. We've adapted to working, learning, socializing, worshiping, and even going to doctor visits virtually. These changes arrived quickly and not without frustration for many, as the pivot to Zoom, YouTube, and other virtual platforms requires patience. So much patience. Muting, unmuting, finding the right link, and unstable connections challenged all of us to keep our cool. Yet, here we are, shaping the future of religious life and stubbornly, beautifully insisting that the show must go on. Now, perhaps we might celebrate our collective resilience, creativity, and endurance as we've adapted locally and globally. Hopefully, we're more attuned to the privilege that many of us hold with our easy access to safe spaces, to shelter, to work from home arrangements, technology to keep us connected. Such conveniences are not small privileges, they're enormous and speak to the systems that generate and reproduce inequality and inequity in our world. The pandemic, I hope, brought many of us into a deeper relationship and collective responsibility for these local and global inequalities. There were powerful learnings available to those of us sheltering in the places of our privilege. Like many of you, I celebrate much of this shift into virtual spaces. The luxury of working from home was a gift. It allowed me to care for myself while continuing to work and feel useful during the beginning phases of the pandemic. Although it wasn't long before I felt isolated and anxious, and I had to allow for new ways of being in community and connection into my life. Perhaps this journey feels familiar to many of us living in a matrix of privilege, gratitude, and fear for what was ahead. Throughout these 18 months, I've been haunted by a looming question. I've wondered, as people of a living tradition, a faith that is alive in our flesh, alive in our community of gathering, celebration, ritual, rite, and passage, how are we being the living tradition these days? With so much of our lives connecting in the virtual world and in the age of physical distancing and disconnection from touch, the nuances and supports of gathering in familiar places and familiar times, I wonder what is keeping us together when the world seems to always be falling apart. I've carried this question in my heart as I've witnessed the world navigate the ever-changing, ever-uncertain, ever-frustrating pandemic times that seem certain to keep us apart. When the world went into lockdown in the March of 2020, we had no idea that 18, 19, 20 months later, we would still feel unsafe, unmoored, shaken, sad, lonely, and frankly, a little more than nervous about the future, even as vaccines arrived. It's clear now that COVID is here to stay. And really, this might be the only predictable piece of the story so far. The presence of the pandemic, those early days are so fresh that nearly every conversation I have with a new person involves some form of, where were you when? We tell the story, often over Zoom, and more frequently these days in person, at a distance, wearing a mask. Each new conversation circles back to the story, the beginning, seeking witnesses around us to hear the pain, struggle, fear, and grief, witnesses to discoveries of love, joy, strength, and resilience. This really revealed itself recently when we heard the wide range of COVID confessions at the 6-Minute Memoir fundraiser last week. The range of reflection and experience was vast, and yet threads of uncertainty, frustration, and fear met a deeper appreciation for life. We will each be processing this global trauma for a long time, touching upon it, microdosing, healing, and connection into our lives in the midst of ongoing uncertainty. At a distance and in the virtual world, we will find some sanctuary. So I ask again, how are we being our living tradition in these days of virtual connection, physical distance, suffering, loneliness, uncertainty? How are we being the living tradition far away from the holy ground and sacred spaces that hold us and keep us? One answer I come up with is that our practice of renewing and keeping our covenants, our shared agreements with each other, our community and the earth, as we notice ourselves as part of the interdependent web of being. Our covenant invites us to live into relationship with each other, to define how we will be in our community. It shapes our normative and aspirational behaviors. When working well, our covenants help us return to relationship when we make mistakes, and God knows we all make mistakes. It helps us return to relationship when harm happens or when we need to navigate change and adapt swiftly to changing circumstances. Our covenants are intended to change and adapt with us. We return to them with new knowledge, more clarity, and greater appreciation for the future we wish to create. In the last few weeks, I've been thrilled to participate in covenant crafting with several groups as I have attended meetings in the congregation. I found these conversations comforting and revealing as themes about how we are together at the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton are revealed. We value listening, space for discussion, taking responsibility for our words and actions, and prioritizing the presence of many voices and experiences. This deeply co-creative and collaborative work nurtures healthy communication and invites inclusive communities to take shape. Done well, covenants help each of us show up authentically and mindfully, holding the tension of our individual needs alongside the expectations and desires of the community. They help us be better together. And living in covenant can be a struggle too. We can feel a struggle to set our own interests aside for the greater good, to own accountability for our words and deeds, and to notice when our regular way of doing things reproduces inequity and oppression in our community, and we are asked to be accountable. This can be hard work. And we should find ourselves in a healthy struggle with these commitments. We want to struggle with them. We want to do better and be better. If we value justice and equity in the world, we need to intentionally be justice and equity in our community and live that struggle and work it out with our covenants and with each other. It is redemptive work living in covenant. We discover depth and clarity and our love for one another, and we can be witness to the possibility of collective liberation. We are being the living tradition when we attend to the heartbeat of our beloved community and courageously live into our covenant with each other. We remake the world with our aspirations and the work we do. The Unitarian Universalist Association's Congregational Life Staff Group offer helpful guidance and clarity here. They write, covenant is the silk that joins Unitarian Universalist congregations, communities, and individuals together in a web of interconnection. The practice of promising to walk together is the precious core of our creedless faith. Covenant is both a noun and a verb. It can be written agreement among individual community members promising to behave certain ways, and it can mean to engage in mutual promises with spirit, with other people and communities. I love this. It helps me notice that covenant is a verb. It's about being and doing our lives together, and acknowledges the importance of integrity as we journey together. We are the living tradition in the covenants we keep, the covenants we restore, renew, and return to time and time again. And I can't help but notice that being the living tradition happens in other ways too. On Thursday evening, I witnessed a gathering, a collective embodiment, a heartbeat of people gathered to tell the truth and commit themselves and our communities to accountability and justice in a spirit of solidarity and allyship with Indigenous communities across Canada. While we were gathering to mourn and remember, there was also a spirit of joy and trust alive in our gathering. Being the living tradition, perhaps, is also an understanding that we can do the work of justice, repair, and renewal, and know that joy, connection, and care are alive and abundant all around us, even as growing pains emerge, especially the growing pains for those of us who are sheltering in the place of our privilege, are invited into growth and growing. I notice on Thursday that there is a heartbeat, a pulse, a body of people open to new ways of being, doing, and becoming that can say yes to change with enthusiasm. If we are to fully live into our covenants and commitments to each other in the world, this embodied agility is essential, and it will serve us well as our community continues to adapt to the changing world. In the year ahead, we will continue to reflect on covenant and explore how being the living tradition in our community and the wider world is shaped by our changing relationship with our principles. Our opening words today from Alice Walker are a powerful reminder that justice starts in ourselves, in our bodies and actions. Reminds us that our living has an impact on the life of another human being, another sentient being, and the planet. In the days ahead, let us notice the beating of our hearts, feel the presence of life flow through our bodies and recommit to lives that harm no one, lives that uplift and advocate for justice and equity in the world. May it be so, and blessed be.
Number 1024, when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do. Oh Lord, you've got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you've got to sing. Oh Lord, you've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you've got to laugh. Oh Lord, you've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you've got to dance. Oh Lord, you've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you've got to shout. Oh Lord, you've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do. Oh Lord, you've got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
I hope it was more than just me dancing this morning. The Spirit called me to dance and sing. Go, friends. Go into the world, being our living tradition. With your whole beautiful selves, may the beating of your heart awaken kindness, love, and justice in this hurting, uncertain world. May we resist complacency and be charged with saying yes. We extinguish this chalice, but not the fire in our heart or the warmth of this virtual community until we meet again. Go in peace.
We resist, we refuse to let hatred in. We rise up, we won't back down. We're in this till the end. We resist, we refuse to let hatred in. We rise up, we won't back down. We're in this till the end. We resist, we refuse to let hatred in. We rise up, we won't back down. We're in this till the end. We resist, we refuse to let